Hello everyone. Wow, we did it, guys. We're here. This is it. This is officially my top 10 favorite movies of 2023. If you are returning to this video series, thank you for coming along on this wild ride that has gone on for far longer than it should have. And if you are new to these videos, welcome to my channel also. We have finally reached what to me is the peak of cinema in 2023. In my opinion. Obviously, there are plenty of films from last year that I haven't seen yet. For all we know, this list could be very different in a few months from now. Maybe even tonight if I put on something special. The 2022 list that I did a video on a year ago currently has 3 new entries for movies that I watched after the video was published. So, things change. This is not a list set in stone. And, this list could very well be as different when I make my 2024 video. I will be talking very loosely and informally about these movies. Many of these films already have reviews, which I will attach in the description below, and there will be spoilers throughout the video, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, it would probably be best for you to skip that specific film. Alright, so let's get into it. Starting at number 10 is Anatomy of a Fall. I think the central mystery of the film still haunts me to this day, and I think that's a testament to the powerful filmmaking by Justine Triet. The screenplay feels like a great novel, in that it's just filled to the brim with just subtext, fascinating characters, a really compelling mystery, and it never gives you enough to feel like you figured it out. The main goal of Anatomy of a Fall is to create uncertainty and to have you dissect uncertainty, to have you come to conclusions and then to try to figure out how you arrived at those conclusions or even confront yourself for making those conclusions. I'm sure there are plenty of people who watched this film that immediately believed that Sandra murdered her husband, but you have this great long runtime to make you think, well, why do I think that? Sandra Hüller has had an incredible year. She has 2 amazing performances in films that both ended up on this list, so the other one is coming up if you know what I'm talking about. As I've said, it is a long movie, but there's something fascinating about watching long films in a theater and feeling a full auditorium of people slowly just become absorbed into a film. I feel like that progression really culminates in this great reaction everyone had in the theater to the snap zoom that happens right after the big argument scene in the court, where everyone reacted like they were watching some sort of action thriller, almost like we were finally allowed to breathe in a way after an extremely tense, long fight scene. That was a very magical moment to me, and hopefully these awards and notoriety will allow Miss Triet to keep making movies forever. At number 9 is Beau is Afraid. To me, this feels like Ari Aster's meanest film. All of his movies are about this character who's hiding in the wings and pulling strings and leading our main characters to a inevitable, usually nightmarish conclusion. This film, though, feels like the cruelest out of the 3 which carry that kind of theme. Just to know that everything in Beau's life was constructed to lead to that ending just really upset me on my first watch, to the point where I was walking home to the train in tears, thinking about just the horrible fate that Beau was left with. And while this film doesn't reach the same highs as Aster's last 2 films, this one is definitely his funniest, and it's his most ambitious. The set design is just beautiful to look at, especially in the play within a play sequence in the woods. I think Joaquin Phoenix is perfect in this film. He embodies this very broken and anxiety-riddled little man, and he takes everything in this very surreal film seriously enough for us to believe in it. I think this film also has one of the best depictions of a police officer that I've ever seen in a film. Right in that last couple minutes of the first section of the movie in the city, the cop screaming, "Don't make me do this," was such an incredible statement that Ari Aster was making, and to make it as funny as it was scary, it feels like something that he's especially good at doing. Nathan Lane in particular is such a standout. His line delivery when he calls Beau my brother is so funny. The overall reaction to this film kind of makes me feel like surrealism is dead in cinema, which is unfortunate because I want more movies like this. And I wish that people were more enthused about being challenged when they go to a theater. At number 8 is May December. Todd Haynes has always been a great provocateur, and in this film, he's kind of like at his most mature and subtly provocative when it comes to how he uses the shock factor of the story in May December. He does a great job holding back and letting you arrive to the shock on your own pace. I think both Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman are just fantastic in it. Julianne Moore in particular, her well-tested and exercised defense mechanisms to create this innocent little character, especially with that lisp, was so fascinating. And long after the movie ends, you realize how both women really were just playing this wild game of mental chess with each other. They were never on any kind of good terms. They were both there with their own goals, and they just butt heads the entire film. Charles Melton was so incredible in this film. He just gives this complex portrait of someone who has chosen to live with their trauma and even love it for a time before inevitably the threads start to show and unravel. And watching him begin to lose his grip on his reality that was co-crafted by Julianne Moore's character, it was harrowing to watch him start to come to terms and want to have relationship-defining discussions with this woman who he clearly began an affair with far too young, obviously, and to watch her try to spin the web back in her favor is one of the most chilling scenes of the year, for sure. And then the final shot of this film, which, I mean, after we hear over and over again how much respect Natalie Portman's character wants to give to the story, just to see it culminate in what will become an exploitation of a young man's trauma. It was so perfectly indicative of Hollywood, not only of what they do, but just how they use others for their own gain. That whole final moment shot this movie right into my favorites of 2023. At number 7 is Spider-Man: Across the Spider-Verse. Across the Spider-Verse brought me back to when I was a teenager and was excited for superhero films and felt energized watching them. This film is just made of pure energy. I don't watch a lot of superhero films anymore. I've definitely grown out of them, but every once in a while, one of these movies will come along that will just kind of sweep me back into it. And I was very happy for it to be this one. Every frame of every shot in this film is just filled with creativity, but also fuels the emotional and thematic journeys these characters take. I think this film has the best pacing of 2023. The almost 2.5-hour runtime was barely felt, in my opinion. Somehow not a single scene is wasted or feels slow. I like every character and was completely invested in all of their stories and all of their just basic journeys in this part 1 of a 2-part film. Somehow a movie that is almost all set up has the feeling of a 3-act film in which I felt completely satisfied by the time the film cut to black. The music is just part of a year where film scores took a step forward, in my opinion. The score here is complex and innovative, like many other scores for films that are on this list, but Daniel Pemberton really rocked it. I mean, I can barely imagine the layers of sound that goes into almost every single piece of the score. It truly is one of the most important aspects of the whole film. How it propels the story forward, how it emphasizes our characters' feelings at any given moment. It feels like almost an impossible job to do, and this guy just knocked it out of the park. I think the animation is just as groundbreaking and influential as the first film, even more so this time around. Hopefully the animators get treated a little better next time for the next film. Like I said before, even though this film is all set up, I loved how this film ended, and I look forward to seeing how they plan to conclude the trilogy. At number 6 is Asteroid City. In my opinion, this is Wes Anderson's best movie since The Life Aquatic. The sets of Asteroid City are absolutely perfect to me, only really matched by the incredible cinematography in its crisp black and white. It's beautiful, old Technicolor looking color. The story about the play's creation and all the drama behind it are what have stuck with me the most when it comes to this film. I think about the actors chanting, "You can't wake up if you don't fall asleep," all the time, basically. I find it kind of like a little mantra now, almost. I think this is Wes Anderson's most personal and philosophical screenplay, and it spoke to me deeply, especially about the meaning of performance and even creativity. I feel like it just has to do with the specific time of my life where I watched the movie. I was learning a lot about the group theater at that time, and there are so many references to that throughout the entire film. It was honestly just kind of one of those serendipitous moments, I think, where suddenly a film seemed made for you. I really love the scene with Margot Robbie in the fire escape, and it still brings tears to my eyes when I think about it. As good of a year as Margot Robbie has had, it's another testament to her great acting abilities that she's able to take this film over for 3 minutes and leave with one of the most memorable scenes from that movie. And it was great seeing Jason Schwartzman back in an Anderson film. He's developing into a great mature actor, and I'm sure his career is going to reach even bigger highs in the upcoming years due to this new direction he seems to be going in. At number 5 is Killers of the Flower Moon. Somehow Scorsese, 50 years into a legendary career, is still creating images that just blow me away. That shot where the woman with the baby carriage is shot by a mystery person from behind a curtain is the greatest image he has created in his long career. I found it to invoke images of old silent films and modern violence, fusing those two things together in a way that I feel like only Marty can do. Speaking of long careers, Robert De Niro gives an all-time performance in this film. To me, he is American evil, this calm and friendly, scheming man whose top priority is just pure greed, and he is going to take it however he wants because he feels like he is entitled to it. There's a scene partway through the film where he just casually hands an Osage woman a bottle of liquor. It was such a simple gesture, and it became one of the most sickening moments of the year for me. It's a moment that culminates hundreds of years of history with Native Americans in this country. I'm really pulling for Lily Gladstone at the Oscars this year. She did so much with her performance, her subtlety, her primal grief of having to witness her family slowly being taken away from her at the hands of these disgusting human beings who just see them as paydays. And just when you think this movie can't get any better, you have the final scene in the radio house, which was such a devastating sequence. We just sat through 3 hours of grim storytelling, and then we have to watch that story get reduced to some half-hour crime show with sound effects and glossing over the humans whose lives were taken away from them. And then we have the director himself come on stage and make his own statement and read Molly Kyle's obituary, while also implicating himself and in turn us, the audience, into this entertainment exploitation of the Osage people. To me, this was the director cameo to end all director cameos. I don't think I can take another filmmaker seriously if they even think of the idea of shoving themselves into their own movies anymore, and we have Martin Scorsese to thank for that. At number 4 is Poor Things. Poor Things was one of the most enjoyable theater experiences this year for me. Poor Things met and exceeded every one of my expectations. I am a huge Yorgos Lanthimos fan, and this is probably his best film. This is his most accessible film. I have a review out for Poor Things already, and in that review I talk a lot about the technical aspects of the movie because that's what I was so captivated by. It was just a joy to watch a film that was shot on real sets. Real sets that looked great and were creative, wearing costumes that were unique and special. And speaking about great scores, Justin Fendrick's score for this movie is completely out of this world. It is the most unique score of the year, in my opinion. It's almost annoying that Oppenheimer came out this year because everyone is so dead set on that film winning best score, which I will continue to say it is a very good score, but it did not push the boundaries of what a score can be like Poor Things did. One scene in particular where Mark Ruffalo's character throws one of Bella's books off of a boat, and then the older woman next to her just gives her another one, literally brought Alice Tully Hall down. We all just clapped and we cheered for this very simple and yet incredibly powerful moment. It was one of the best moments of last year. This film was such a beautiful journey for our main character, and watching Bella Baxter find herself in a wide variety of ways, culminating in that final slow motion ending, I just remember tears filling up my eyes, and I was just smiling and feeling so happy for this fictional character. That's why I go to the movies, to feel for characters that don't even exist. And number 3 is The Zone of Interest. The film's style and coldness are its greatest assets in my opinion. The film is very anthropological in how the camera is static and framed with these wide angle lenses, very much like a security camera. How and where the camera is placed feels like the stylistic antithesis to a film like Son of Saul, where through that film's cinematography we are put directly into the psychology of someone who is literally living through hell. But with this film, Jonathan Glazer knows, or I believe at least thinks, that we don't really need to understand these characters psychologically, like at all. You don't need any more information about the Haas family than these are people who are capable of and desire to live next to an extermination camp. With that information alone, they are passively engaging in and are well lubricated cogs in basically a giant horror machine, a murder machine. I think The Zone of Interest might be the most important film of 2023. Not just because of bigger events that are currently unfolding around the world, but as a statement about everything and everyone and where we're headed currently. Back in October, going to my first viewing of The Zone of Interest, I thought the film was going to be about people who are able to achieve the levels of inhumanity needed to arrive at a point of desiring to live next to a concentration camp. But now, with this rewatch, I think that the film is more about how this inhumanity has always been prevalent in every single human being on Earth, and how terrifyingly easy it is for us to tap into it and embrace it. The question is not how could we ignore the screaming and the gunshots over the garden wall. The film is a statement, and it's saying we all can do this. We are all able to ignore the screaming every single day. And I mean, if you think about it, there is a constant avalanche of screaming coming from beyond the fence, but it's coming in through our phone screens and through news broadcasts, and we're bombarded with it, and we just keep looking at the flowers, like Hedwig and her baby. We keep talking about the vegetables we're growing in our garden. We have our dinner parties. We have our birthday celebrations. One scene that's especially haunting is the scene where the youngest son witnesses a prisoner being drowned for fighting over an apple through his window, and quickly closing the blinds and going back to play and telling himself, oh, don't do that again. That just felt like us when we scroll past images of eviscerated bodies and starving children and mass shootings all over this country. It's an uncomfortable fact, and it was one of the most uncomfortable things you could be confronted with sitting in a movie theater last year. At number 2, our penultimate film is not a film, but a miniseries. It is Nathan Fielder's The Curse. To be fair, I consider The Curse to be a very, very long movie that just happened to come out over a couple of months weekly. It's a full story, so in those parameters, I'm keeping it on the list, and it is staying as high up as it is on the list. The Curse is one of the best television shows I've seen in a very long time. It's a meeting point of 3 creative titans who are each taking steps in new directions and kind of pushing themselves into new territory. Nathan Fielder proved with the show that he can not only act, but be very scary and very vulnerable, especially in the end of the 3rd episode where he tries to express himself in a healthy way that it seems that a marriage counselor has instructed them to. And Emma Stone's character basically brushes him off, and he gets extremely upset about it. That kind of raw nerve vulnerability really blew me away. Also, the fact that he's going toe-to-toe with Emma Stone, of all people, just really incredible. Emma Stone is such a perfect bitch in this film. She is just that specific kind of comes-from-money person who is nice as a strategy. And she's really fun and, at times, extremely harrowing to watch. Benny Safdie is really forging his own path post Safdie Brothers fame, and I'm all here for it. I do think he is a great actor. I think he pulled some very strong emotional scenes in the show. I feel like he would have fit very well into a John Cassavetes movie if he ever got cast in one, if he was alive back in the 70s and 80s. He just has that kind of energy where he can step up and bring a certain type of intensity throughout an entire runtime. All I can say about the ending of the show is that it is one of the most audacious creative decisions since probably Twin Peaks: The Return, in where we are expanding the limits of cable television and showing the viewers something they haven't seen before. I have been fighting an urge to rewatch the show again, and I don't know how much longer that will last. There is a very good chance I will jump back in and possibly write something about this show, because I do think it is something that is very special, and I can see this show getting legs in a year or two after the dust has kind of settled a little bit, and the show becoming something much bigger than it is currently. And finally, my favorite film of the year, my number 1 choice of 2023, is All of Us Strangers. A quick story. I was at Alice Tully Hall for the screening. I was in line for the bathroom before the film. Andrew Haigh walked by me on the way to the stage to kind of get ready to come out and to introduce the film. And it felt like I had just seen a rock star. I'm such a huge fan of his. I've been following his career since I watched Weekend in college, and he's a filmmaker whose films always speak to me in some very personal way. Whether it's Weekend or Lean on Pete even, 45 Years especially, all of his films just dig right into me. This is by far the most devastating film of the year for me, and it's obviously for personal reasons. As a gay man, watching a gay character's journey through self-catharsis is important to me. Haigh writes dialogue that's just so simple and full of meaning. One line of dialogue would just break me down. Like nothing, like I was nothing. You know, the performances across the board are outstanding, but Andrew Scott has given the ultimate performance of the year. In my opinion, the best performance of the year. You will not see another actor reveal themselves emotionally in such a naked way this year at all. He is so vulnerable and he is so truthful. It's really hard to think of another acting performance being this authentic, where that barrier of performance is just so thin. You just want to reach out and hug him and hold him and tell him everything's going to be fine. At my screening, there was definitely not a single dry eye in the room. I'll say I was just devastated for at least a week after the film came out. I was just laying my head on my desk and listening to The Power of Love on repeat. But I think that's a good thing. I think people should embrace the sadness of this film. If there was ever a movie to be destroyed by, this is the one. I know people don't like going to movies to feel sad most of the time, but I do think it's important that we utilize film as an outlet for every single one of our emotions, not just joy or fear sometimes if you like horror movies. I think that we are able to have wonderfully dark emotional experiences in theaters too, and that's something that we should all embrace a little bit more. Well, that's it. That's my top 10 films of 2023. Thank you for watching. Again, if you have watched all the other videos, thank you for sticking with me. If this is your first video, thanks for watching. I have 3 other videos in which I recommend or don't recommend a lot of other movies from 2023, so I highly encourage you to check those out. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe, and tell me what you thought of the list. You know, I didn't get a lot of comments in the last few videos. I worry people don't want to share their opinions with me. No, feel free to, you know, did you like the list? Did you think it was stupid? What's your favorite movie of 2023? Is it Oppenheimer? If it's Oppenheimer, that's fine. Is it Meg 2: The Trench? I hope not. I'm sure by the time I'm done editing this, my Kickstarter will have ended. But as I've said before, we are fully funded, so please stay tuned for updates on the documentary and other videos I'll make in the future. You know, this channel's been growing a little bit, and I'm planning on keeping it going. There's gonna be more reviews soon. It is still the dead season for movies, and I have basically no interest in anything new that's in theaters. There will be reviews soon, I do promise that. Okay. I'm gonna leave now. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.